Turning back to the U.S., the White House campaign against trans rights is moving on multiple fronts, with executive actions to bar trans women and girls from participating in sports and block access to gender-affirming care, while trying to ban transgender service members from the military and declaring the federal government only recognizes two sexes, male and female. Now, some European countries are cautioning trans and non-binary travelers bound for the U.S. to contact the American embassies in their home countries first to clear up any questions about their passport status prior to departure. Olivia Hill is a Nashville council member. She's the first elected transgender lawmaker in Tennessee, where a bill to segregate bathrooms by biological sex is now headed to the governor's desk. Olivia Hill, welcome to the program. Let's just talk about what we've seen out of this administration in its first few weeks in office. In his inaugural address and one of the first executive orders, President Trump asserted, as we noted, only two sexes exist, that is female and male, established at conception. He signed executive orders aimed at banning any mention of transgender people in schools, banned transgender athletes from women's sports, and threatened to withhold funding from universities that do, and barred trans people from serving in the military, just to list a few of the items here. Is this what you expected from this administration, or has this surprised you, just the amount of attention and the actions already taken just 2 months in?
Well, first off, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. And no, it doesn't shock me or surprise me at all from Donald Trump. This is kind of expected. Let's start at the top. And first, there's two sexes. Is what they say. We know for a fact that there's three because there's intersex, and that's someone that's been born with some form of both. And so if we know that there's now three, then if you try to say there's black and white, then we know that there's another form of gray, and it's different shades from charcoal to light gray. And so if we know for a fact that there's at least three genders and sexes, then we have to start listening and go from there.
On the issue of military service, this is something personal for you. You served in the U.S. Army for 9 years, I believe, and this executive order suggests that transgender people cannot, quote, satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. A district judge, we should note, ruled that this executive order likely violates U.S. constitutional guarantees of equal protection under the law. But speaking from your own experience, I'd like for you to respond to this order.
Well, I need to clarify. It was U.S. Navy that I served, and I served right at 10 years. And I've been trans my entire life, and it didn't affect my service at all. I did 3 deployments, 2 of which were in the Persian Gulf, and I saw combat during Desert Storm. So it didn't affect my military service at all, and it doesn't affect any service member being trans. If anything, the one thing that I've learned in my transition is the loss of my white male privilege. And I know now as a woman that I have to work 3 times as hard to only advance twice as much. So for trans women to continue to excel, it just means they're working that much harder.
What made you go into public service?
I started standing up for women's rights, and I connected with Danica Roan from Virginia, who encouraged me to run. And she told me that if I wanted to make a difference, to not help elected officials, but to become one. And so that's what I did. It's the thing that's rocked my world the most in my transition was the loss of my white male privilege that I didn't know that I had until it went away. And it went away like a switch.
I'd like to get you to respond to the reaction we've seen thus far, not only to the election and Donald Trump winning office again, but how he ran on this issue of trans rights in general, and how the Democrats have thus been quite divided in responding to it subsequently. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, widely expected to have higher aspirations to run for president soon, had this to say in a recent podcast on the issue.
It turns out in 2014, years before I was governor, there was a law established that established the legal principles that allow trans athletes in women's sports. But the issue of fairness is completely legit. It is an issue of fairness, and I think Democrats have lost it.
How do you respond to that? Do you think it's an issue of fairness?
Here's the thing. In the first 2 years of my transition, I shrunk almost 2 inches because the disc in between the vertebrae are less on a woman than they are on a man. I lost every bit of my upper body strength within the first 3 months. My skin is thinner, so I cut easier, I bruised easier. My lung capacity is about 3/4 of what it used to be. My red blood cell count's about 60% of what it used to be. I lost muscle mass throughout my entire body. So to say that we're exactly the same is just inaccurate and it's just wrong. We don't have enough time for me to go into all the things that have changed, but I mean, just like Leah Thompson, the swimmer from Pennsylvania, she stopped for 2 years to start taking estrogen and hormone blockers for testosterone until her estrogen levels and testosterone levels were within female standards. And then she started to compete. And if you look at her numbers now versus her numbers prior, they're a whole lot less, which proves that we lose strength and agility.